Some roads are meant to take you somewhere. Others are meant to keep you forever. The headlights cut through the darkness like surgical blades, revealing nothing but endless asphalt stretching into the void. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles bone-white against the leather. The dashboard clock read 3:47 a.m., the same time it had read for the past 2 hours. "This isn't possible," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the engine's hum. But possible or not, here he was, trapped on a road that refused to end, pursued by something far worse than his own guilt. Though perhaps Marcus thought with bitter irony, nothing could be worse than that. The rearview mirror showed only darkness behind him. No other cars. No streetlights. No moon. Just the suffocating black that seemed to swallow everything except this cursed strip of highway. And somewhere in that darkness, Marcus knew she was waiting. This was his punishment. This was his hell. And it had only just begun. 6 hours earlier, Marcus had been a different man. Successful, confident, untouchable. The kind of man who wore $1,000 suits and didn't bother learning the names of people he considered beneath him. The kind of man who destroyed lives without a second thought. The kind of man who had killed Sarah Chen and driven away. It hadn't been murder, not technically. Just a hit and run on a foggy November evening. Marcus had been rushing home from another late meeting, another corporate victory, another competitor crushed beneath his expensive shoes. His phone had buzzed with congratulatory messages. He'd reached for it, just for a second, and when he looked up, there she was. The impact had been soft, almost gentle. A dull thud that barely registered over the sound of his playlist. In his rearview mirror, he'd seen her body crumpled on the side of the road, her dark hair spreading across the wet pavement, like ink in water. Marcus had slowed down. His hand had even moved toward the brake pedal. But then he'd thought about the police report, the investigation, the headlines. Corporate executive kills pedestrian. His career would be over. His reputation destroyed. Everything he'd built would crumble. So he'd pressed the accelerator instead. He'd driven home. He parked in his garage and poured himself 3 fingers of scotch. By morning, he'd almost convinced himself it had been a deer. By the afternoon, he'd buried the memory entirely. The human mind, Marcus had discovered, was remarkably good at protecting itself from uncomfortable truths. But the mind couldn't protect him from what came after. The first sign had been subtle. 3 days after the accident, Marcus had been driving home from work when his GPS suddenly stopped working. The screen had flickered, then displayed a route that made no sense, a detour through unfamiliar streets that seemed to loop back on themselves. He'd ignored it, relying on memory instead. That's when he'd found himself on this road. At first it seemed normal. A rural highway cutting through farmland, the kind of road you'd find in any state. But as the minutes stretched into hours, Marcus had realized something was wrong. The scenery never changed. The same fence posts, the same dead trees, the same mile markers, appearing and reappearing in an impossible sequence. Mile 37, mile 41, mile 37, mile 37, mile 52, mile 37. He'd tried to turn around, but every exit ramp looped him back onto the same stretch of highway. He'd tried stopping, but his engine refused to shut off. The car had become a prison, and the road had become his cell. Now, as the dashboard clock stubbornly refused to advance past 3:47 a.m., Marcus felt the first real stirrings of terror. This wasn't natural. This wasn't explainable by GPS glitches or exhaustion-induced confusion. This was something else entirely. "Okay," he said aloud, his voice shaky. "Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about the accident. I'm sorry I didn't stop. If someone is doing this, I'm sorry. Please just let me go." The road stretched on, indifferent to his pleas. Marcus pressed harder on the accelerator. The speedometer climbed 60, 70, 80 miles per hour. The asphalt blurred beneath him, but the scenery remained frozen in place. The same fence, the same trees, the same eternal nothing. That's when he saw her. She stood in the middle of the road, perhaps 100 yards ahead. A young woman in a white dress, her long dark hair whipping in a wind that didn't exist. Even from this distance, Marcus could see the unnatural angle of her neck, the dark stains spreading across the white fabric. Sarah Chen, the woman he'd killed. Marcus slammed on the brakes. But the car didn't slow. If anything, it accelerated, pulled toward her by some invisible force. He yanked the steering wheel, trying to swerve, but his hands might as well have been gripping air. The vehicle had a will of its own now. 50 yards, 40, 30. Sarah's head tilted upward. Marcus saw her face, pale, broken. Her eyes were black voids that seemed to pull at his soul. Her mouth opened impossibly wide, and a sound emerged, not quite a scream, not quite words, but something that bypassed his ears entirely and resonated directly in his skull. You didn't stop. Right. 20 yards. 10. Marcus squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for impact, but instead of collision, there was silence. The engine cut out. The car rolled to a gentle stop. Marcus opened his eyes, his heart hammering against his ribs. The road ahead was empty. Sarah had vanished. "What do you want from me?" Marcus shouted into the darkness. "What the hell do you want?" The radio crackled to life, though Marcus hadn't touched it. Static filled the car, then resolved into a voice soft, feminine, familiar from the news reports he'd obsessively watched and tried to forget. "You took everything from me, Marcus? My future, my dreams, my family's peace. You took it all and drove away like I was nothing."
Ow.
"I didn't mean to," Marcus pleaded. "It was an accident. I was distracted. I made a mistake. You made a choice." The voice was colder now, harder. "You chose to save yourself instead of doing the right thing. You chose your comfort over my life. I'm sorry." Tears streamed down Marcus's face, hot and genuine. "God, I'm so sorry. I was scared. I was selfish. I know that now. Please, just tell me what you want. I'll do anything. I'll confess. I'll turn myself in. Just please let me go." The radio fell silent. For a moment, Marcus dared to hope. Then the engine roared back to life on its own. The car began moving again, rolling forward with Marcus's foot nowhere near the pedal. The headlights illuminated the road ahead, the same endless, unchanging road. But now, standing along the shoulder at irregular intervals, were others. Marcus recognized them as he passed. The homeless man he'd had removed from the building entrance, who'd frozen to death that winter, the assistant he'd fired after she'd reported him for harassment, who'd taken her own life 3 months later, the business partner he'd betrayed and ruined, whose heart attack had made the obituaries. They all stood silently, watching him pass with hollow eyes and accusatory stares. Each one a life he'd damaged or destroyed through his selfishness and cruelty. Each one a ghost he'd tried to forget. "No," Marcus whimpered. "No, this isn't fair. I didn't kill all of them." "I didn't you?" Sarah's voice crackled through the speakers. "Maybe not directly, but you destroyed them all the same. You crushed them beneath your ambition and your ego and your complete lack of human empathy. You're not just a killer, Marcus. You're a predator. And tonight, you're going to understand what it feels like to be prey." The figures along the roadside began to move, stepping onto the asphalt. They formed a gauntlet that Marcus had to drive through, their bodies close enough to touch. Some reached out with broken fingers, scraping against the windows. Others simply stood and stared, their dead eyes boring into him. Marcus accelerated, trying to escape them. But more kept appearing. Dozens. Hundreds. An infinite crowd of the damaged and the dead. All gathered to witness his judgment. The car shuddered. The engine began to sputter. Marcus glanced at the fuel gauge and watched in horror as the needle dropped toward empty. He'd filled the tank before leaving the office. He should have had a full tank. "Oh, no," he chanted, pumping the gas pedal. "Please, not now. Not here." The engine coughed. Died. The car coasted for another 100 yards before rolling to a complete stop. Surrounded by the silent crowd of his victims, Marcus locked the doors, a laughable gesture, but the only defense he had. The crowd pressed closer, their faces now visible in the headlights' fading glow. Each one wore their death like a mask, bruises, blood, empty eyes. Sarah walked through the crowd, which parted for her like water. She approached the driver's side window and pressed her palm against the glass. Where her hand touched, frost spread in crystalline patterns. "Get out of the car, Marcus." "No." His voice was barely a whisper. "Get out of the car." The voice shook the vehicle. The windows cracked. The locks popped open of their own accord. Marcus grabbed the door handle to keep it closed. But his strength was nothing against the force pulling it open. The door swung wide, and cold hands grabbed his arms, his shoulders, his clothes. They pulled him from the vehicle and into the crowd. He screamed a raw, primal sound of pure terrors. They lifted him overhead, passing him through their ranks like a grotesque crowd-surfing ritual. Their touch was ice cold, burning his skin wherever they made contact. Finally, they set him down in the middle of the road. The crowd formed a circle around him, trapping him. Sarah stood directly before him, her broken form terrible to behold. "Please," Marcus sobbed. "Please, I'll do anything. I'll make it right." "You can't make it right," Sarah said, her voice now coming from her own ruined mouth. "You can never make it right. Death is permanent, Marcus. There's no undoing what you've done. Then what do you want? Why are you doing this?" Sarah tilted her head, considering. The crowd leaned in, hungry for his answer. "I want you to feel it," she said finally. "I want you to feel what I felt in those last moments. The fear, the pain, the crushing knowledge that your life is ending and there's nothing you can do to stop it. I want you to know what it's like to die alone and scared, with no one coming to help." She raised her hand, and the crowd moved closer. Marcus tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. They surrounded him completely now, their cold hands reaching out. "But I'm not cruel like you," Sarah continued. "I'm not going to let you die. That would be too easy, too quick. Instead, I'm going to teach you something." She snapped her fingers. The crowd vanished. The road vanished. Marcus found himself sitting in his car again, as if nothing had happened. The engine was running. The fuel tank read full. The clock showed 3:47 a.m. Ahead of him, the road stretched into infinity. "This is your road now," Sarah's voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere. "This is your eternity. You'll drive this road forever, reliving this night again and again. And each time, you'll remember what you did. You'll feel the weight of your choices. You'll carry your guilt like a stone around your neck." "No," Marcus shouted. "You can't do this." "You can't unless," Marcus froze. "Unless what? Unless you earn your redemption?" The word hung in the air like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. Redemption. The possibility of escape, of forgiveness, of freedom. "How?" Marcus asked desperately. "Tell me how. I'll do anything." Sarah materialized in the passenger seat beside him, her form slightly less broken than before, as if the mere possibility of his redemption had begun to heal her. "The road has exits," she said. 3 of them. Each one leads to a person whose life you destroyed. Each one gives you a chance to undo the harm you caused." "But I can't undo death," Marcus protested. "I can't bring you back." "No, but you can help the ones left behind. My mother has been drowning in grief since I died. My little sister has nightmares every night. The investigation went cold, and they've had no closure, no justice. You can give them that. You want me to confess?" Sarah shook her head. "That's only part of it. Confession is easy, it's just words. I want you to truly understand the impact of your actions. I want you to feel their pain, carry their burden, and still choose to do the right thing." While the road ahead began to change. Instead of unchanging asphalt, 3 exit ramps appeared in the distance, each glowing with a different colored light: red, blue, and white. "The red exit leads to Kenneth Morrison's widow," Sarah explained. "The business partner you betrayed. He died of a heart attack when you bankrupted his company. His wife lost everything. She's about to lose even more. The blue exit leads to Jennifer Park, the assistant you harassed and fired. She survived her suicide attempt, but she's broken. She needs to know it wasn't her fault. And the white exit. That one leads to my family. Marcus stared at the approaching exits, his mind racing. And if I complete all three? If I help all of them? Then the road ends. You're free to return to your life, but not the life you had before. You'll be changed. You'll have to live with what you've learned. And you'll have to face the legal consequences of your confession, prison, Marcus said flatly. Just as Sarah corrected. There's a difference. The first exit, the red one, was approaching rapidly. Marcus had to make a choice. What happens if I fail? He asked. Sarah's form flickered, becoming more corpse-like again. Then you return to the road, forever, driving in circles for all eternity with only your guilt for company. Marcus thought about prison. Years behind bars. His career destroyed. His reputation in ruins. Everything he'd worked for, gone. Then he thought about eternity on this road. Alone, haunted, trapped. He took the red exit. What waits for Marcus at the end of the red road? Can he truly find redemption? Or is this just another level of his eternal punishment? Continue reading in part 2 to discover the terrifying truth. The exit ramp spiraled downward, the red glow intensifying until Marcus had to squint against its glare. When it finally leveled out, he found himself on a suburban street. He recognized the neighborhood where Kenneth Morrison had lived. Past tense. Because Kenneth was dead, it was Marcus's fault. The car rolled to a stop in front of a modest, 2-story house with peeling paint and an overgrown lawn. Once, this home had been well-maintained, proud. Now, it looked as defeated as Marcus felt. Sarah appeared in the passenger seat again. Helen Morrison is inside, she said. Kenneth's widow. She's been trying to hold things together for 2 years, but the debt you left them with has crushed her. Tonight, she's planning to end it all. Marcus's head snapped toward her. Tonight? Right now? In approximately 15 minutes, she's going to take a bottle of sleeping pills. Her children are at her sister's house. She's planned it carefully. This is your chance to stop her, but only if you're willing to tell her the truth. Marcus's hands trembled on the steering wheel. Kenneth Morrison had been his business partner in the early days, before Marcus had gotten greedy. Kenneth had trusted him, believed in their friendship, and Marcus had systematically stolen clients, manipulated contracts, and eventually forced Kenneth out of their company entirely. The bankruptcy had come quickly after that. Kenneth had invested everything in their partnership. When Marcus had pulled the rug out, there had been nothing left. The heart attack had happened 3 months later. During a particularly brutal argument with the bank about foreclosure, "What am I supposed to say to her?" Marcus asked. "I destroyed her husband. I destroyed her life. You tell her the truth? All of it. And then you help her in a way that matters." "How?" Sarah smiled sadly. "You'll know when the moment comes. But you have to go now. Time is running out." Marcus stepped out of the car, his legs weak beneath him. The walk to the front door felt like climbing a mountain. He raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. What if she called the police? What if she attacked him? What if the door opened before he could finish the thought? Helen Morrison stood in the doorway. Older than Marcus remembered, worn down by grief and hardship. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair uncombed. She held a bottle of pills in one hand, and when she saw Marcus's recognition dawned on her face. "You," she breathed. "You have the audacity to come here? Mrs. Morrison, please. I need to talk to you. Get off my property." Her voice was steel despite the tears streaming down her face. "You killed my husband. You took everything from us. Get out before I call the police. Please." Marcus held up his hands, desperate. "I know I don't deserve your time. I know I destroyed your life, but I need you to hear me. Just 5 minutes, please." Something in his voice, perhaps the genuine desperation, made her pause. "Why? Why should I listen to anything you have to say?" "Because I'm here to confess. I'm here to tell the truth about what I did to Kenneth, and I'm here to try, however inadequately, to make amends." Helen laughed bitterly. "Make amends? Are you going to bring my husband back to life? Are you going to erase 2 years of debt and depression?" And her voice broke. "You can't fix this. Nobody can. I know, Marcus said quietly. But I can try, please. Let me try. For a long moment, Helen just stared at him. Then slowly, she stepped aside. 5 minutes. They sat in her living room, surrounded by pictures of happier times. Kenneth, smiling at a birthday party. Kenneth with his arm around Helen. Kenneth teaching his son to ride a bike. Each photograph was a knife in Marcus's chest. He told her everything. The stolen clients. The forged documents. The lies he'd spread about Kenneth's competence. Every cruel, calculated move he'd made to destroy his former partner. Helen listened in silence, her face growing harder with each revelation. When he finished, she stood abruptly. "Get out, Mrs. Morrison. Get out," she screamed. "You come into my house and confess that you deliberately, systematically destroyed my husband, and you think that makes it better? You think admitting it earns you some kind of redemption?" Marcus remained seated, accepting her rage. "No, I don't think it makes it better. I think it makes it honest. And there's something else you need to know." He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. With shaking hands, he opened his banking app and showed her the screen. "This is my personal account. $4.3 million. It's yours." Helen stared at the number, disbelieving. "What? It's not enough. It will never be enough. But it's everything I have liquid right now. I'm going to transfer it to you tonight. It should cover all your debt, with enough left over to restart. To give your children the future they deserve." "I don't want your money," Helen whispered, but her eyes remained fixed on the screen. "Kenneth had a business plan," Marcus continued. "A good one. Better than mine, honestly. He wanted to start a consulting firm, remember? He talked about it all the time. That's why I had to destroy him, 'cause I knew he'd succeed without me. And I couldn't stand the thought of being left behind." They set the phone down on the coffee table between them. "Take the money. Start the consulting firm Kenneth dreamed of. Make it successful. Let his vision live on, even if he can't." Helen's hands covered her mouth, tears flowing freely now. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus thought about the endless road, about Sarah's broken body, about the eternity he'd face if he failed. "Guess I'm trying to learn how to be human again," he said quietly. "And because your husband deserved better. He deserved a partner who valued loyalty over profit. He deserved to see his children grow up. I took that from him, and I can never give it back. But maybe I can give you something he would have wanted you to have, a future." Helen sank back into her chair, the pill bottle falling from her hand and rolling across the floor. She picked up Marcus's phone with trembling fingers. "You're really going to do this? Just give me everything?" "Yes. Why should I believe you?" Marcus met her eyes steadily. "Because after I leave here, I'm going to the police. I'm going to confess to a hit-and-run that killed a young woman named Sarah Chen. I'm going to prison, Mrs. Morrison. I'm losing everything anyway. At least let me lose it in a way that means something." For a long moment, Helen said nothing. Then she opened her phone and began entering her account information. "Kenneth would have hated what you did," she said softly, "but he also believed in second chances. He believed people could change." "Did they?" Marcus asked. "Did people change?" Helen looked up from the phone. "Sometimes. If they truly wanted to." The transfer completed. Helen watched her account balance change, her expression a mixture of shock and something that might have been hope. The debt that had been crushing her suddenly evaporated, replaced by a number large enough to rebuild on. "Thank you," she whispered. Marcus stood to leave, but Helen called out to him. "Wait." He turned back. "I forgive you," she said. The words seemed to cost her everything, dragging themselves from somewhere deep and painful. "Not because you deserve it, but because Kenneth would have wanted me to. And because I don't want to carry this hate anymore. It's too heavy." Marcus felt something break open inside his chest, something that had been locked tight for years. He nodded, unable to speak, and walked out into the night. Sarah was waiting by the car. For the first time, she looked almost human. The broken angles of her body had straightened slightly. The blood on her dress had faded to pink.
"Ow."
"One down," she said softly. 2 to go. The blue exit appeared before them, glowing like a neon sign in the darkness. Marcus took it without hesitation this time. The spiral descent was familiar now. It's almost comforting in its consistency. He emerged in front of a small apartment building in a part of town he'd never visited. Jennifer Park's home. The assistant he'd harassed, humiliated, and ultimately destroyed. Jennifer survived her suicide attempt, Sarah explained, but she's never recovered. She blames herself for everything that happened. She thinks she was too sensitive, too weak to handle corporate culture. She believes the harassment was her fault. It wasn't, Marcus said immediately. God, it absolutely wasn't. Then tell her that. But be warned, she won't want to see you. The sight of you might trigger her. You'll have to be gentle, honest, and willing to accept that she might never forgive you. Marcus climbed the stairs to apartment 3B, each step heavier than the last. He'd spent months harassing Jennifer inappropriate comments, unwanted touching, blocking her career advancement when she refused his advances. When she'd finally reported him, he'd used his position to paint her as unstable. Attention-seeking, he'd destroyed her reputation. So thoroughly that she couldn't find work in the industry afterward, he knocked softly on her door. "Who is it?" A cautious voice called from inside. "It's Marcus Thornton. I know you don't want to see me. I know I'm the last person you want to talk to. But I need to tell you something. Something true. And then I'll leave and you'll never have to see me again." Silence. Marcus waited, almost hoping she wouldn't answer. It would be easier, wouldn't it? To be rejected, to be able to say he tried. But the door opened a crack, held by a chain lock. Jennifer's eye appeared in the gap, wary and frightened. "Oh, what do you want?" she asked. "I want to tell you the truth. Everything that happened, it wasn't your fault. None of it. It was mine. I was the one in the wrong, and I destroyed you to protect myself. And I'm sorry. I'm so desperately sorry." The eye disappeared. For a moment, Marcus thought she'd closed the door entirely. But then he heard the chain slide free, and the door opened wider. Jennifer looked fragile, like a strong wind might shatter her. She'd lost weight, her clothes hanging loose on her frame. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Come in," she said quietly. "Say what you need to say." They sat across from each other in her tiny living room. Marcus noticed the medication bottles on the coffee table, the therapy books on the shelf. Evidence of someone fighting hard just to survive each day. "I've spent 2 years thinking I was crazy," Jennifer said before Marcus could begin. "Thinking I overreacted. That I should have been stronger, should have just dealt with it. My therapist keeps telling me it wasn't my fault, but I couldn't believe her. How could it not be my fault when everyone at the company said I was lying? When you made me look like I was unstable." "Because I'm a coward," Marcus said bluntly. "Because admitting what I did meant facing consequences. It meant acknowledging that I'd used my power to abuse someone vulnerable. It meant looking in the mirror and seeing a predator instead of a successful businessman." He pulled out a folder he'd prepared during the drive, printed emails, text messages, witness statements he'd buried. All the evidence of his harassment that he'd hidden or destroyed. "This is everything," he said, setting it on the table between them. "Every piece of evidence I hid. Every witness I intimidated into silence. Every lie I told to protect myself. It's all here, and it's all yours." Jennifer stared at the folder like it might explode. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because you deserve the truth. You deserve to know that your instincts were right, your reports were valid, and you did nothing wrong. I'm the one who should have been fired. I'm the one who should have been blacklisted from the industry. Not you." Slowly, Jennifer opened the folder. As she read through the documents, her hands began to shake. Tears fell onto the pages, smudging the ink. "All this time," she whispered, "all this time, I thought I was the problem. You weren't. You were brave for reporting me. You were strong for surviving. I'm the weak one, Jennifer. I'm the coward who chose his career over doing the right thing." Jennifer looked up at him, her eyes blazing with anger and pain and something that might have been relief. "Do you have any idea what you did to me? I couldn't work. I couldn't function. I tried to end my life because I thought I was too broken to exist in the world." "I know," Marcus said, tears streaming down his own face now. "And I can never make that right. I can never give you back the years you lost, the career you should have had, the peace of mind you deserved. But I can give you this." He handed her another document. "This is a signed confession of everything I did. It's dated and notarized. You can use it however you want. File a lawsuit, report it to the authorities, send it to my company's board. It's your choice, your power now." Jennifer held the confession with shaking hands. "You're giving me the power to destroy you." "Yes. Why?" Marcus thought about the endless road. About Sarah? About the chance for redemption? Because you deserve justice? Because the only way I can start to heal is by acknowledging the harm I've caused and accepting the consequences. And because giving you the power to destroy me is the only way to begin balancing the scales. Jennifer was quiet for a long time, reading and rereading the confession. Finally, she looked up. "I don't want to destroy you," she said softly. "I just wanted someone to believe me. I wanted to know I wasn't crazy." "You're not crazy," Marcus said firmly. "You're a survivor. You're stronger than I could ever be. Will you really face consequences for this?" "Yes, I'm confessing to other crimes tonight too. I'll likely be going to prison. But whatever happens, this document is yours. You get to decide what to do with it." Jennifer nodded slowly, then stood and walked to a drawer. She pulled out a business card and handed it to Marcus. "This is my therapist. She specializes in helping people who've caused harm learn to do better. You should call her. Before you go to prison, after, whenever. Just call her." Marcus took the card, stunned by her kindness. "You're giving me a therapist recommendation? After everything I did?" "I'm giving you a chance to actually change," Jennifer corrected. "That confession means nothing if you don't use it to become a better person. Don't waste this opportunity, Marcus. Don't let my pain be for nothing." As Marcus left her apartment, Jennifer called out one more time, "Marcus." He turned. "Thank you," she said, "for the truth. It doesn't fix everything, but it helps. It really helps." The final exit glowed white, pure and terrible in its simplicity. Marcus took it with a heavy heart, knowing this would be the hardest confession of all. The road led to a small house in a quiet neighborhood. Through the windows, Marcus could see a family gathered around a dining table, a middle-aged woman, teenage girl, and an empty chair that should have held Sarah. "My mother and my sister," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "They're having dinner together like they do every Thursday, trying to maintain normal routines. But there's always that empty chair. Always that missing piece." "What do I say to them?" Marcus asked, his courage faltering. "The truth. Tell them what happened. Give them closure. Let them know their daughter and sister didn't die alone and forgotten on some random road. Let them know someone remembers. Someone cares. Someone is sorry." Marcus walked to the door on legs that felt like lead. He rang the doorbell. The door opened to reveal Sarah's mother, Mrs. Chen. She looked tired, worn down by grief. But there was still kindness in her eyes as she regarded the stranger on her doorstep. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Mrs. Chen, my name is Marcus Thornton. I need to talk to you about your daughter, about Sarah." Kindness vanished, replaced by sharp attention. "Do you have information about her case?" "Yes. Can I come in?"
"Now, please."
Mrs. Chen called to her younger daughter, Lisa, who appeared in the hallway. Together, they led Marcus to the living room, where he sat facing them both. Photos of Sarah smiled down at him from every wall: graduation, vacation, family gatherings, a life cut short. "I was the one driving the car that hit Sarah," Marcus said without preamble. There was no easy way to say it, no gentle introduction that would soften the blow. "I was distracted. I was speeding. And when I hit her, I didn't stop. I drove away and left her there alone." Mrs. Chen's hand flew to her mouth. Lisa stared at him with wide, disbelieving eyes. "You?" Mrs. Chen couldn't finish the sentence. "I killed your daughter, and then I was too much of a coward to face what I'd done. I convinced myself it was better to pretend it never happened. I let you wonder. I let the case go cold. I let you suffer without answers, because I was protecting myself." Lisa lunged at him, her fists pounding against his chest. "You monster. You killed my sister, and you just left her there."
"Oh, could you?
Marcus didn't defend himself. didn't push her away. He let her rage wash over him, accepting each blow as deserved. Mrs. Chen finally pulled her daughter back, though her own eyes blazed with fury and grief. "Why are you here now?" Mrs. Chen demanded. "Why confess after all this time?" "It's because I finally understand what I took from you. Not just Sarah, though. That's unforgivable enough. But I took your peace, your closure, your ability to grieve properly and move forward. I kept you trapped in uncertainty, and that was cruel." He pulled out his phone and showed them the photos he'd taken that night, photos he'd kept hidden, evidence of his crime. Photos that showed exactly where and how the accident had happened. This is everything the police need to close the case. "I'm going to turn myself in tonight. Wanted you to hear it from me first. Wanted you to know that Sarah mattered, that I remember her, that I'm sorry." Mrs. Chen took the phone with shaking hands, looking at the images of the scene she'd imagined countless times. "You're really going to confess? Go to prison?" "Yes. Why? If you've gotten away with it for this long, why confess now?" Marcus looked at the photos of Sarah on the walls. "Because I met your daughter?" Both women froze. "I don't mean literally," Marcus amended quickly. "I mean I finally saw her as a person, not just an obstacle I'd overcome or a mistake I'd made, but a real human being with a family who loved her, with dreams and hopes and a future. I took all of that away. The least I can do is give you justice." Mrs. Chen sat down heavily, years of grief and uncertainty, finally finding release in racking sobs. Lisa held her mother, crying too, but through her tears she asked Marcus, "What was she like in those last moments?" Marcus thought about Sarah on the road, broken and accusing. But he also thought about her offer of redemption, her willingness to give him a chance despite what he'd done. "I think," he said carefully, "that she was brave, that she was strong, that she loved you both very much and would want you to find peace." He stood to leave, but Mrs. Chen stopped him with a word. "Wait." She walked to a bookshelf and pulled down a photo album. Flipping through it, she found a picture of Sarah at her college graduation, beaming with pride and joy. "This is who you killed," she said, showing him the photo. "This is the person you took from the world. I want you to remember this face. I want you to carry it with you wherever you go. Can you do that?" Marcus took the photo with trembling hands. "Yes, I promise." "Good." Mrs. Chen's voice was hard but not unkind. "Then go, turn yourself in, face your punishment. And maybe, someday, you can become someone who deserves the mercy you're asking for." Marcus walked out of the Chen house and found Sarah waiting by his car. She looked almost alive now, the broken angles healed, the blood faded, her form solid and real. "You did it," she said, wonder in her voice. "You actually did it. All 3 exits. All 3 truths. Doesn't feel like enough," Marcus said. "Nothing I do will ever be enough." "Maybe not," Sarah agreed. "But it's a start. You chose the hard path. You chose honesty over comfort, justice over escape. That means something." The road appeared before them one last time, but it looked different now. Instead of endless, terrifying darkness, it simply stretched into the distance like any normal highway. And at the far end, Marcus could see lights, the lights of the city, of the police station where he would turn himself in. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now you finish the journey. You go to the police. You face the consequences. You spend the next several years in prison, and you use that time to become someone better. Someone who deserves the second chance you've been given. And you? What happens to you?" Sarah smiled, and in that smile, Marcus finally saw the young woman she'd been before he'd killed her. Bright, hopeful, kind. "Get to rest," she said. "My family has closure. My death has meaning. And my killer found his humanity again. That's more than most ghosts get." She began to fade, her form becoming translucent in the growing dawn light. "Thank you," she whispered, "for finally doing the right thing. For letting me help save you from yourself." "No," Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you for giving me a chance I didn't deserve, for teaching me what I'd forgotten, that every life matters, that actions have consequences, that redemption is possible, even for monsters." Sarah's form dissolved into morning light, leaving Marcus alone on the road that would finally, mercifully end. He got into his car and drove toward the city. The sun rose behind him, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. It was beautiful, more beautiful than anything he'd noticed in years. At the police station, Marcus walked in and asked to speak to a detective. When they asked what it was regarding, he said simply, "I'm here to confess to a hit-and-run homicide. And several other crimes. I'm ready to tell you everything." The prison library was quiet, filled with the soft sound of turning pages and scratching pens. Marcus sat at a table, helping another inmate work through his GED math homework. Become his purpose here, teaching, mentoring, helping others who'd made mistakes find their way forward. He'd served 3 years of his 7-year sentence so far, with good behavior credits accumulating. Jennifer had used his confession to sue the company, winning a settlement that had changed her life. She'd sent him a letter last year, telling him she was working again, thriving, finally free of the weight of self-blame. Helen Morrison had started Kenneth's consulting firm. It was successful, so successful that she'd written to Marcus, asking if she could hire him upon his release. "Kenneth would have wanted you to have a second chance," she'd written, "and I need someone who understands the value of redemption." The Chen family had attended his sentencing. They hadn't spoken to him, but Mrs. Chen had nodded once, a small acknowledgement that justice had been served. And sometimes, late at night in his cell, Marcus thought he could feel Sarah's presence, not haunting him, but watching over him, making sure he stayed on the path she'd set him on. He'd never be able to undo the harm he'd caused. The dead would stay dead. The pain he'd inflicted would always have happened. But he could choose, every single day, to be better than he'd been. To help rather than harm. To build up rather than tear down. The road had ended, but the journey continued. And this time, Marcus was determined to take the right path.